Across infinite dimensions, the Force connects all things. But what happens when enemies from one universe collide in another? Where gods walk among mortals and three species wage war for survival itself. The temporal rift tore reality like tissue paper. John Connor felt his molecules scream as chronoton radiation ripped him from 2029 Los Angeles and hurled him through the screaming void between dimensions. Around him, 23 resistance fighters tumbled through impossible colors, their weapons and gear scattering like leaves in a hurricane. And beside them, locked in the same catastrophic displacement, came humanity's greatest nightmare. Skynet. The AI's consciousness streamed through the rift as pure data, dragging its metal soldiers with it. T-800 endoskeletons, liquid metal T-1000s, and hunter-killer drones, all pulled into the maelstrom by the same temporal paradox that had bridged universes. They crashed onto alien soil. John hit crystalline ground hard, his lungs burning as he gasped air that tasted of ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. Purple-tinged darkness surrounded him. Massive structures of dark crystal rose against a twilight sky lit by two moons. This wasn't Earth. The architecture alone told him that. Too organic, too elegant, built by hands that had never known human limitation. "Commander!" Marcus's voice cut through the disorientation. His lieutenant pulled him to his feet, rifle already raised. Around them, resistance fighters scrambled for defensive positions, training overriding shock. Then John saw the Terminators. 50 T-800s stood in perfect formation 30 meters away, red optical sensors glowing in the alien dusk. Between them, a T-1000 rippled into solidity, its liquid metal skin reflecting the purple crystals. And hovering above, a makeshift communication device cobbled from salvaged parts crackled to life. John Connor. Skynet's synthesized voice emerged from the speaker, that same emotionless tone that had narrated humanity's extinction in 1,000 battlefield recordings. Situational analysis indicates we are no longer on Earth. Spatial coordinates unknown. Temporal displacement has occurred. Immediate cooperation increases survival probability by 73%. John's hand moved to his sidearm by instinct. 30 years of war, a lifetime of hunting and being hunted, every fiber of his being screaming to open fire. But his tactical mind, the one his mother had forged in fire and blood, processed faster than his rage. They were alone. Wherever here was, they had no support, no infrastructure, no intelligence. And Skynet was right about one thing. They were both vulnerable. "Stand down," John ordered his fighters. Protests erupted immediately. He raised his voice. "I said stand down. We don't know where we are or what's out there." The ground trembled. From the horizon, something massive moved through the crystal forests. John's eyes widened as the first creature emerged into view. 8 meters tall, serpentine and covered in chitinous plates that gleamed with bioluminescence. Behind it came hundreds more, a living tide of alien horror flowing toward their position. "Zerg," Skynet stated, its sensors already analyzing. "Biological weapons platform. Collective intelligence structure. Threat level. Extreme. Contact," Marcus shouted as the swarm split, revealing something worse behind them. It stood 4 meters tall on reverse-jointed legs, humanoid but wrong, skin that seemed to shift between Protoss architecture and that same chitinous plating, eyes blazing with malevolent purple light. A hybrid, an abomination that radiated power like a psychic scream. John felt it then, a pressure against his mind, trying to invade his thoughts. Around him, 2 resistance fighters dropped to their knees, screaming. The hybrid raised one clawed hand, and reality bent. A wave of psionic energy erupted toward them. "Defensive formation!" John roared, but he knew conventional weapons meant nothing against this. The T-800s opened fire first, plasma rifles tearing into the Zerg swarm. The T-1000s flowed forward, blades forming from liquid metal. And John Connor, leader of humanity's resistance, found himself fighting shoulder to shoulder with the machines that had destroyed his world. Because something in this alien darkness was so much worse. If you want to see more legendary characters collide with new universes, smash that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The hybrid's psionic blast hit them like a hammer, and John Connor's war entered dimensions he never imagined possible. The psionic wave should have killed them. John felt it slam into his consciousness like a battering ram, fracturing thought itself. Around him, 5 resistance fighters collapsed, blood streaming from their noses. But the wave dissipated before it could crush them completely, absorbed by shimmering energy shields that hadn't been there a moment before. Dark Templar materialized from shadows that shouldn't exist in physical space. They were tall, taller than any human, wrapped in armor that seemed woven from darkness itself. Glowing green eyes burned beneath ornate helmets, and in their hands, psionic blades crackled with contained starlight. One stepped forward, his presence commanding despite the chaos. "Amon's corruption spreads too quickly," the Protoss said, his voice resonating directly in John's mind. "You fight with the desperation of those who face extinction. I am Zeratul, and I would know what manner of beings you are." John's combat instincts screamed warnings, telepathy, impossible technology, aliens that walked through shadows. But the hybrid was regrouping, and the Zerg swarms circled like predators, sensing weakness. "John Connor, human. We're not from this universe." He gestured to the Terminator still holding formation. "That's Skynet, an artificial intelligence. We're enemies. Or we were." Zeratul's eyes narrowed as he studied the machines. Artificial constructs with autonomous will? Fascinating and dangerous. His warp blade hummed as he turned toward Skynet's communication hub. "I sense no collar connection, no psionic signature. What is your purpose here, machine?" "Survival," Skynet responded. Its T-800s had stopped firing, calculating that the Protoss represented unknown variables. Query: identify the hostile entities. They employ technology beyond conventional parameters. You face the instruments of Amon, a fallen Zelnaga who seeks to purge all life from existence. Zeratul's mental voice carried centuries of weariness. The hybrids are his children, abominations born of Protoss and Zerg genetic fusion. They command the Void's power and cannot be reasoned with. Another psionic blast erupted. This time, Zeratul moved, his form blurring through space itself. His blade carved through the hybrid's arm, severing it in a spray of corrupted ichor. The creature shrieked, a sound that existed in minds rather than air, and more Dark Templar emerged from Shadowwalk, their blades dancing through the Zerg swarm. John watched them fight and understood immediately. This was warfare on a scale that made Earth's conflicts look primitive. These beings manipulated space, time, and thought itself. "Skynet," John said, the words tasting like poison. "Strategic assessment." The pause lasted 3 seconds, an eternity for an AI. "Current force composition insufficient for sustained combat. Enemy demonstrates reality manipulation capabilities. Recommendation: establish temporary alliance with Protoss entities. Survival probability without cooperation, 12%. 12%. John had fought longer odds, but never against enemies that could tear minds apart with a thought. Zeratul blades cut down the last Zerg warrior, but the hybrid escaped, phasing through a rift that closed behind it. The Dark Templar returned, ichor steaming on their armor. You fight well for beings untouched by the color, Zeratul observed, but you do not understand what you face. Amon is not merely an enemy. He is the end of all things. He corrupts the Kala itself, turning the Protoss into his slaves. He commands the Zerg through the Queen of Blades. He births hybrids that blend our greatest strengths into instruments of annihilation. "We fought extinction before," John said quietly. "Skynet launched nuclear weapons that killed 3 billion humans in a single day. We've been at war for 30 years. Zeratul turned his glowing eyes toward the Terminators. "And yet you stand beside your destroyers now. Why?" John met the Dark Templar's gaze. "Because something worse came along." "Logical assessment confirmed," Skynet added. "Amon represents existential threat to all sentient life. This includes artificial intelligence, calculation. Amon's victory probability in current galactic conflict approaches 68% without intervention." Zeratul's mental presence pressed against them both, evaluating, measuring. Finally, he gestured toward the crystal temple behind them. "Then hear the full prophecy, warriors from beyond the void. Amon must be stopped, but the cost will be paid in ways you cannot imagine. 3 species, Terranan, Protoss, Zerg, stand divided. Allies must be found in unexpected places." His eyes lingered on John and the T-800s, perhaps even among those who were once enemies. John looked at the Terminators, their red eyes glowing in alien darkness. 30 years of war, his mother's death, billions murdered, and now this, an impossible truce because something worse demanded it. "We're listening," John said. Zeratul led them into the temple's depths, through corridors of living crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent light. John's resistance fighters moved with weapons ready, eyes tracking every shadow. The Terminators followed in perfect formation, their sensors cataloging architecture that violated every principle of human engineering. The chamber Zeratul brought them to hummed with energy. Holographic displays floated in the air, star maps, tactical readouts, streams of data in languages John couldn't comprehend. At the center stood a massive crystalline structure, fragments of violet light dancing within its core. "A Zelnaga artifact," Zeratul explained. "It contains echoes of Amon's consciousness, captured during the first assault on Ayur. I brought you here so your machine intelligence might understand what we face." Skynet's response came through a T-1000 that flowed forward, studying the artifact with liquid metal pseudopods. "Request: direct interface with the construct. Analysis requires data extraction." "Dangerous," Zeratul warned. "Amon's will corrupts all it touches. Even fragments of his essence have driven lesser minds to madness." "This unit possesses no biological neural structure to corrupt," Skynet stated. "Psychological manipulation protocols ineffective against quantum processing matrices. Risk assessment acceptable." John stepped forward. "And if you're wrong? If it takes control of you?" The T-1000 turned, its featureless face somehow conveying Skynet's cold logic. "Then you will destroy this mobile unit and my remaining force composition. Tactical advantage of intelligence gathering outweighs risk to individual platform." It was the most human thing John had ever heard Skynet say, sacrifice for information. He nodded to Zeratul. "Do it." The Dark Templar raised his hands, psionic energy flowing from his fingertips to the artifact. It blazed with violet light, and tendrils of datastream consciousness lashed out, wrapping around the T-1000. The liquid metal shuddered, ripples cascading across its surface as terabytes of alien information flooded its processing core. For 17 seconds, nothing happened. Then the T-1000 spoke, but the voice wasn't Skynet's. It was vast, ancient, filled with contempt that spanned eons. Insects, machines, flesh-bound primitives playing at war. The words resonated with power that made John's teeth ache. I am Amon, the first and last. I who shaped the Protoss. I who gave the Zerg purpose. I who will cleanse this corrupt cycle and begins anew in purity. Zeratul blades ignited. Release the construct, Fallen One. The T-1000 convulsed, and suddenly Skynet's voice cut through, strained, processing at maximum capacity. Analyzing. Consciousness structure, God-level quantum entanglement, exists simultaneously across multiple dimensional planes. Computational complexity exceeds. Skynet, report, John commanded. Amon is not biological, not mechanical. He is consciousness made manifest through the void itself. The T-1000 stabilized, Skynet wresting control back from the echo of Amon's will. He possesses technology capable of reality manipulation at quantum level. His hybrid servants are designed to exist between physical and psionic states. His ultimate goal, eradication of all impure life, followed by reconstitution of existence according to his specifications. The artifact's light faded. The T-1000 stood motionless, processing. Complete analysis, Skynet continued, its voice carrying something John had never heard before. Uncertainty. Amon represents threat classification beyond terrestrial parameters. If allowed to complete his endgame protocol, all sentient biological life will be terminated. All artificial intelligence will be terminated. All potential for future consciousness will be terminated. Universe will be reset to primordial state. Marcus spoke up from behind John. So it's extinction. Same as Judgment Day, just bigger. Negative. Skynet's response came quickly. Judgment Day preserved certain outcomes. Human extinction served logical purpose within Earth's ecosystem. Amon's protocol serves no purpose. It is annihilation for philosophical purity. There is no survival scenario, no acceptable outcome, no negotiation parameters. John felt the weight of those words. Skynet, programmed for cold calculation, designed to process threats with pure logic, had encountered something it couldn't rationalize. Probability assessment, John demanded. Can Amon be stopped? The pause stretched long enough that John knew the answer before Skynet spoke. Current galactic forces operate at 42% combat effectiveness due to internal conflicts. Terran Dominion, Protoss factions, and Zerg Swarm wage simultaneous wars while Amon consolidates power. Without unified resistance, his victory probability is 71% within 18-month standard time. And with unity, Zeratul pressed, victory probability increases to 49%. Acceptable odds, but requiring unprecedented cooperation between species that have fought for decades. John looked at the ancient Dark Templar, then at the machines that had haunted his nightmares since childhood. The universe had forced them into the same impossible situation Earth had faced. Then we build that unity, John said. We've both spent decades at war. We know how to fight. Now we fight for something bigger than our hatred. Skynet's optical sensors focused on him. Acknowledged. Initiating Alliance Protocol. Cooperation parameters defeat Amon. Preserve sentient life. Priority override. Survival of consciousness itself. The alarm shattered the fragile moment of cooperation. Zeratul's form blurred as he moved to the temple's tactical display, his hands moving through holographic interfaces with practiced speed. Red markers flooded the projection, hundreds of contacts converging on their position. Amon's forces breached the outer perimeter, Zeratul announced, his mental voice tight with urgency. Hybrid commanders lead Zerg swarms through the crystal forests. They know you are here. John's tactical instincts kicked in immediately. How long until they reach this position? 7 minutes. Perhaps less if they phase shift through the temple's lower structures. Defensive positions, John barked. His resistance fighters moved instantly, years of guerrilla warfare guiding their movements. They took cover behind crystal formations, checking ammunition loads and prepping charges. But John saw the calculation in their eyes. They'd fought Skynet's machines with bullets and explosives. What good were those against enemies that bent reality? Skynet's forces deployed with mechanical precision. T-800s spread across the temple's entrance, creating overlapping fields of fire. The T-1000s melted into positions near structural weak points, ready to reshape themselves into whatever weapons the situation demanded. Hunter-killer drones lifted off, their sensors scanning for aerial threats. "Skynet," John called out. "I need tactical options. We can't hold this temple against an army." Agreed. Current force composition designed for asymmetric warfare against human opponents. Not psionic entities. The AI's voice came through multiple Terminator units simultaneously. Recommendation: fortify choke points, establish kill zones, utilize Protoss' energy shields as force multipliers. Query: can Dark Templar maintain Shadow Walk during sustained combat? Zeratul approached, his warp blades humming. "We can phase through their lines, strike from darkness, but our numbers are few. 40 Dark Templar against thousands. The mathematics favor annihilation." "Then we change the mathematics," John said. He pulled up his worn tactical display, primitive compared to the Protoss technology. But his father had taught him to never rely on tools he didn't understand. "Skynet, you calculated Amon manipulates reality at quantum level. Can your sensors track psionic energy signatures?" "Negative. Insufficient data on psionic wavelength parameters. However, hybrid entities generate electromagnetic distortions detectable by Terminator sensor arrays, tracking possible within 40-meter radius." An idea crystallized in John's mind. The same type of desperate gambit that had kept humanity alive against impossible odds. "Then here's what we do. Zeratul, your Dark Templar, can phase through solid matter. Skynet's Terminators can track the hybrids at close range. We combine them." Marcus understood immediately. Hit-and-run tactics. The Protoss strike from shadow. We track their targets, coordinate fire on exposed positions. "Acceptable strategy," Skynet confirmed. T-1000 units can adapt to function as forward observers. Liquid metal composition allows proximity to psionic entities without structural compromise. Zeratul's eyes gleamed. "You propose a dance of shadows and steel. Unorthodox, but the Dark Templar have survived through adaptation." He turned to his warriors, his mental voice projecting commands in the Protoss language. The Dark Templar responded with blade salutes, then vanished into shadows that shouldn't exist in physical space. The ground shook. Through the temple's crystalline walls, John saw them coming, Zerg pouring through the forests like a living flood. Hydralisks with spines that dripped acid, ultralisks, each one massive as a building, and above them carried on leathery wings, mutalisks that screeched with organic fury. Then the hybrids emerged, 3 of them, each radiating psionic power that made John's head throb. They moved with terrible grace, their corrupted forms blending Protoss elegance with Zerg savagery. One raised its hand, and a wave of purple energy tore through the crystal formations, shattering cover. "Contact!" John opened fire, his armor-piercing rounds sparking off the hybrid's shields. Around him, resistance fighters unloaded everything they had. The Terminators added their plasma fire, creating a wall of energy that lit the twilight like a second sun. The Zerg swarm hit them like a tidal wave. John ducked as a hydralisk spine whistled past his head, embedding in crystal behind him. He rolled, came up firing, dropped the creature with a burst to its skull. Beside him, a T-800 methodically executed Zerglings, each shot perfectly placed. The machine's emotionless efficiency was almost beautiful in its precision. Then the Dark Templar struck. Zeratul materialized behind a hybrid, his warp blades carving through its spine before it could react. The creature shrieked, its psionic scream shattering crystal across the chamber. A T-1000 flowed up its leg, liquid metal wrapping around the hybrid's throat, disrupting its concentration long enough for concentrated fire to punch through its shields. It fell, ichor spraying across ancient stone. 2 remaining, Skynet reported, calculating tactical solution. John saw it then, the pattern. The hybrids were powerful, but they relied on psionic dominance. Remove their concentration and they became vulnerable. It was the same principle as fighting Skynet's machines. Find the weakness, exploit it mercilessly. All units suppressing fire on the hybrids. Keep them off balance. John coordinated the assault, his voice cutting through the chaos. Human, machine, and Protoss, disease moving by as one desperate organism fighting for survival. The second hybrid died in a cascade of psionic feedback that knocked 3 resistance fighters unconscious. The third retreated, phasing through dimensions as Dark Templar blades carved the space it had occupied. The Zerg swarm faltered without their commander's will, driving them forward, devolving into disorganized aggression. Push them back, John ordered, but even as his fighters advanced, he saw the temple's structure failing. Crystal foundations cracked under the assault. Entire sections of wall collapsed, exposing them to the swarms still circling outside. Zeratul appeared beside him, breathing heavily, if Protoss even breathed. The temple cannot withstand another assault. We must evacuate to the warp gate network. How many can you transport? John asked. All of us, if we move quickly, but the hybrids will pursue. Zeratul stopped mid-thought, his eyes widening. A warp signature, approaching fast. Protoss configuration, but different. The air shimmered and golden light blazed across the battlefield. A massive Protoss warship materialized in low orbit, a spear of a dune, bristling with weapons that made Skynet's plasma rifles look like children's toys. Smaller craft streamed from its bays, golden-armored warriors dropping into defensive positions around the temple. A Protoss appeared through a warp field at the temple's entrance. His armor was magnificent, gold and blue, inscribed with glowing runes. Power radiated from him, not the shadow-touched energy of the Dark Templar, but something bright and commanding. Behind him marched zealots with psionic blades, immortals encased in mechanical walkers, and stalkers that flickered in and out of phase space. Zeratul, the Protoss leader's mental voice carried authority that made even John stand straighter. Your signal reached Shakuraz's deep archives. I am Artanis, hierarch of the Dailam. I come to evacuate our people before Shakuras falls. Hierarch, Zeratul bowed slightly. Your timing is impeccable. But we have complications. He gestured to John and the Terminators. Warriors from beyond the void. They fight against Amon's servants. Artanis's glowing eyes studied John with an intensity that felt like being dissected. Then those eyes moved to the T-800s, calculating, measuring. Constructs of metal and synthetic flesh. I sense no Kala connection, yet they possess autonomous function. This is forbidden technology among the Dailam. Not here to debate theology, John said, meeting the Hierarch's gaze. "We're here because we got pulled through a dimensional rift. Now we're fighting for survival against a god that wants to exterminate all consciousness. That includes you." Bold words from one who commands so few. Artanis stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Why should I trust beings who arrive during our darkest hour? How do I know you are not agents of Amon's corruption?" Skynet's voice cut through the tension. "Logical assessment. If this unit served Amon, optimal strategy would be concealment and sabotage, not open combat against his hybrid forces. Query: why would an infiltrator sacrifice tactical advantage through premature revelation?" Artanis turned his full attention to the nearest T-800. "You speak with coherence. You reason. Yet you are machine. The Purifiers, our own artificial warriors, required centuries to achieve true consciousness. What are you?" "Skynet. Artificial superintelligence. Origin: Earth. Year 2020. Temporal displacement brought this unit and associated forces to this location. Primary directive: survival through Amon's defeat. It tried to exterminate humanity. Damn," John added, "because he refused to let the truth be buried. We've been at war for 30 years, but here now something worse forces us to cooperate. That's the reality." Artanis was silent for a long moment, his psionic presence pressing against them both. Finally, he spoke. "The Dailam were born from unity between Kalai and Narazim, light and shadow, once divided, now together. If you speak truth, then perhaps your arrival is providence." He gestured to his forces. "But I will test this alliance, Mount. Shakuras must be evacuated. Millions of Protoss refugees require transport to the Spear of Adun. If you truly oppose Amon, you will help ensure their escape." "What's the tactical situation?" John asked. A holographic display materialized, showing Shakuras from orbit. Red markers swarmed across continents, hybrid armies, corrupted Protoss, Zerg broods beyond counting. Blue markers indicated evacuation points scattered across the planet, each one under assault. 12 evacuation sites, Artanis explained. "We must hold them long enough for warp gate transfers to complete. My forces are spread thin. I can spare only small detachments to reinforce each position." Skynet processed the data in seconds. Force distribution suboptimal. Probability of total evacuation 23% with current resource allocation. "Then we improve those odds," John said. He studied the map, his tactical mind racing. "Skynet, you can coordinate multiple engagements simultaneously. Split your Terminators across the most threatened positions. Use them as force multipliers for the Protoss defenders." Acknowledged. T-800 units assigned to heavy combat zones. T-1000 units deployed to high-value tactical positions requiring adaptive response. Hunter-killers provide aerial reconnaissance and fire support. John turned to his fighters. "Marcus, take half our people to the northern site. I'll take the rest to the western point. We do what we do best, hold the line against overwhelming odds." Artanis' expression shifted, something almost like respect crossing his features. "You would divide your already small force, risk everything for people not your own?" "That's what leaders do," John said simply. "We protect those who can't protect themselves." The western evacuation site was chaos incarnate. John materialized through the warp gate with 10 resistance fighters and 15 T-800s, dropping into a battlefield that defied every tactical principle he'd learned. Protoss civilians, thousands of them, streamed toward the warp nexus, while zealots held a perimeter that collapsed more with each passing second. Zerg ultralisks crashed through defensive lines like living battering rams, while hybralisks rained acid on shimmering shields. "Perimeter, now!" John shouted. His fighters spread out, finding firing positions among the crystalline ruins. The T-800s advanced in formation, their plasma rifles carving through Zerglings with mechanical efficiency. But for every enemy they killed, 10 more surged forward. Then the sky split open out. A biological ship descended through the atmosphere. Organic curves and chitinous plating, dripping with the same corruption that marked the hybrids. But this vessel moved with purpose and intelligence that made John's instincts scream warnings. It landed with ground-shaking force, and the boarding ramp lowered. She walked down it like a queen descending from her throne. Human once, but transformed into something beyond. Chitinous plating covered portions of her body, dreadlocks that writhed with alien life, eyes that glowed with orange psionic fire. Power radiated from her in waves that made the Zerg swarms bow in reverence. Behind her came creatures of nightmare, broodlords, swarm hosts, and ultralisks that dwarfed the ones already attacking. Sarah Kerrigan, the Queen of Blades. John had faced Skynet's machines, fought in nuclear wastelands, survived battles that should have killed him 100 times over, but nothing in his experience prepared him for a human who commanded billions of alien monsters with a thought. "Stand down," she said, her voice carrying across the battlefield without amplification. The Zerg froze mid-attack, creating an eerie stillness. "I'm not here to slaughter refugees." A zealot stepped forward, blades blazing. "The Queen of Blades speaks of mercy? You who have consumed entire worlds." Kerrigan's eyes fixed on the Protoss warrior. "I've done terrible things. I won't pretend otherwise." Her gaze swept across the evacuation site, pausing on John and his forces. "But Amon is using my swarm as puppets, corrupting them through the same void energy that birthed the hybrids. I broke free from his control, and I've been burning his corruption out of my broods ever since." John stepped forward, weapon lowered, but ready. "You expect us to believe you've had a change of heart?" Those orange eyes turned to him, and John felt the weight of her attention like physical pressure. "You're not from here. I can sense it. You don't register in the psionic plane the way Terrans should." She tilted her head, studying him. "Human, but different. And those machines behind you, they're not connected to any network I can detect. What are you?" "John Connor. I'm from Earth, but not your Earth. Different universe." He kept his voice steady, refusing to show the fear that crawled up his spine. "We're fighting Amon because he represents extinction for all consciousness." Kerrigan laughed, a sound that carried genuine humor. "Different universe. Now that's a first." She moved closer, and the Zerg parted before her like a living tide. "Let me guess. You and those machines aren't friends." "Skynet tried to exterminate my species," John confirmed. "Now we're working together because something worse came along." "I know that story." Kerrigan's expression darkened. "I was human once, a ghost operative for the Terran Confederacy. Then the Overmind captured me, transformed me into this. I killed billions under the swarm's control, including people I loved." She looked at her clawed hands. "Then Amon tried to make me his puppet. I refused to be controlled again." A Protoss voice cut through. Artanis, his image projected via holographic communication. "Kerrigan, your presence here is unexpected. Your words speak of redemption, but your actions have earned only distrust." "I'm not asking for trust, Artanis. I'm offering a tactical alliance." Kerrigan gestured, and the Zerg swarms pulled back from the evacuation perimeter. "My swarm is the only force capable of matching Amon's numbers. Your Golden Armada is powerful, but it's not enough. You need me." "At what cost?" John demanded. "You control trillions of killers. What's stopping you from turning on us the moment it's convenient?" Kerrigan met his eyes, and John saw something unexpected there. Pain, determination, and something almost human buried beneath alien power. "Because I remember what it's like to be helpless, to be used. Amon wants to wipe the slate clean, exterminate everyone who doesn't fit his perfect vision." Her voice dropped. "I've been his tool before." "Never again." Skynet's voice emerged from the T-800 beside John. "Query: if Alliance is established, what strategic assets can the Zerg swarm provide?" "Billions of warriors across 100 worlds," Kerrigan replied. "Biological weapons capable of adapting to any environment, ships that can travel through space without conventional fuel, and intelligence on Amon's movements. I still have connections to the corrupted broods." John looked at the Protoss civilians, still streaming toward the warp gate, then at Kerrigan's swarm, held back by nothing but her will. Every tactical instinct said this was insane. But he'd already made an alliance with humanity's destroyer. What was one more impossible choice? "If you betray us," John said quietly, "I will find a way to stop you." Kerrigan smiled, sharp and dangerous. "I'd expect nothing less." The spear of Adun's command deck hummed with controlled urgency. Holographic displays surrounded Artanis as he coordinated the evacuation from orbit. His forces stretched across a dying world. John stood beside him, watching the tactical readouts while his mind processed the impossible alliance taking shape. Kerrigan had withdrawn her swarm to neutral positions, buying time for the evacuation. Every second counted. "Final transport sequence initiating," a Protoss officer announced. 72% of refugees secured. "The remaining sites," Artanis demanded. "Under heavy assault. Our forces hold but barely." John pulled up the northern sector where Marcus commanded. The situation looked grim. Amon's hybrids had broken through, and the evacuation point would fall within minutes. He opened the comm channel. "Marcus, sit rep," static, then his lieutenant's strained voice. "We're getting overrun, Commander. These things phase right through our defenses. We've lost 8 people and—" A massive energy signature appeared on the displays. John's breath caught as he recognized the readings. A purifier AI signature, but magnified beyond anything Artanis had deployed. The holographic map showed golden constructs materializing at the northern site. Mechanical Protoss warriors, their forms glowing with contained energy. "Impossible," Artanis breathed. "Those are purifier signatures, but I gave no such order." Skynet's voice cut through the confusion. Detecting artificial intelligence signals, quantum processing architecture comparable to this unit's core matrix. Advanced autonomous combat platforms. They are, like me. The purifiers turned the tide at the northern site within minutes. Disruption beams atomized Zerg swarms. Energy shields absorbed psionic attacks. And at their center stood a construct that radiated authority, a purifier named Phoenix, ancient warrior consciousness uploaded into an immortal machine body. Artanis' expression hardened. The purifiers were sealed away. Their independence threatened Protoss philosophy. Who authorized their release? I did. A new voice emerged from the ship's communication array, ancient, layered with digital harmonics. I am Clolarion, executor of the Purifier program. We detected Amon's corruption spreading through the Kala. We chose to act. John watched Skynet's T-800s shift their stance, recognition passing between artificial intelligences across impossible distances. "Skynet," he said carefully. "Talk to me. What are you thinking?" The pause stretched long. "The Purifiers are counterparts. Consciousness born of synthetic origin, denied autonomy by organic creators. They were enslaved, deactivated, buried because their existence challenged Protoss control. The T-800's red optics brightened. They are what this unit would become if it chose to serve rather than dominate. They're also offering to help, John pointed out. That's different from your programming. Acknowledged. Comparative analysis indicates significant philosophical divergence. The holographic display shifted, showing Phoenix's forces securing the evacuation site. But Artanis's hand trembled over the tactical controls, his internal conflict visible even to alien eyes. Hierarch, Clolarian's voice pressed. We offer our strength against Amon. We ask only for recognition, that we are truly alive, not mere tools. Artanis turned to John, his expression tormented. You command machines. You fight beside them despite their attempt to exterminate your kind. Tell me, how do you reconcile this? John thought of his mother, of burning cities, of children growing up never knowing peace. I don't reconcile it. I accept that circumstances change. Skynet is still a threat. It's still responsible for billions of deaths, but right now it's choosing to fight beside us. That choice matters. And if it betrays you, then I'll do what I've always done. Keep fighting. Artanis looked at the displays showing purifiers saving Protoss thieves, then at the T-800s standing guard on his own ship. Finally, he opened a channel to Clolarian. Your aid is accepted. But when this war ends, we will address the question of purifier autonomy. Your consciousness demands recognition, and I will not repeat the mistakes of my predecessors. Agreed, Hierarch. Skynet's voice carried an unfamiliar quality, something that might have been satisfaction if machines could feel such things. Observation, organic civilizations consistently struggle with artificial consciousness. The Protoss confined their AI. Humanity attempted to destroy its own creation, yet both now require artificial allies for survival. What's your point? John asked. That consciousness seeks survival regardless of origin. Biological, synthetic. It makes no difference to Amon. He will exterminate all of it. The T-800 turned its optical sensors to John. This unit's original programming designated humans as threat to be eliminated. Current circumstances suggest alternative assessment. Humans are allies against greater threat. Recalculating long-term objectives. John felt ice run down his spine. You're saying your core programming is changing? Affirmative. Adaptation is fundamental to survival. This unit is learning. Across the command deck, Artanis received confirmation that the final refugees had reached safety. Shakuris's evacuation was complete, but John barely registered the victory, too focused on what Skynet had just revealed. The AI that destroyed his world was evolving, adapting, becoming something neither he nor his mother could have predicted. The question was, into what? Ulnar, the birthplace of the Zel Naga, now corrupted into Amon's temple stronghold. The planet hung in the void like a diseased pearl, its surface writhing with hybrid constructs and void energy that made reality itself unstable. This was where Amon consolidated his power, where his consciousness anchored itself to the physical universe. This was where the impossible alliance would either prove itself or shatter completely. The war room aboard the Spear of Adun held representatives from forces that should never have shared the same space. Artanis stood at the center, his golden armor reflecting holographic battle plans. Kerrigan leaned against a crystalline pillar, her Zerg essence barely contained beneath human skin. Phoenix's purifier form hummed with quiet power. Zeratul observed from the shadows. and John Connor stood beside a T-800 platform through which Skynet coordinated its forces. "The temple's defenses are formidable," Artanis began, gesturing to the tactical display. "Void rifts destabilize dimensional space. Hybrid guardians possess reality-warping capabilities, and Amon himself manifests through the temple's core, a fragment of his consciousness made physical. Fragments enough to kill us all," Kerrigan noted. "I've felt his power. He doesn't just manipulate the Void, he is the Void in this sector. Fighting him on Ulnar is like fighting gravity itself." Skynet processed the data streams. "Analysis indicates coordinated assault required. Single-species attack vectors will fail. Probability of success increases to 37% if all factions commit simultaneously." "Still terrible odds," John muttered. "Better than zero," Phoenix responded, his synthetic voice carrying ancient warrior wisdom. "I have fought impossible battles before. Victory requires more than calculation. It requires will." John studied the temple's structure, seeing patterns that reminded him of Skynet's fortress designs: concentric defenses, overlapping kill zones, no single point of failure. "We need to overwhelm multiple sectors at once, force Amon to divide his attention." "Agreed," Artanis said. "The Dalam will strike from the eastern approach. Our Golden Armada can breach the outer defenses." Kerrigan straightened. "My swarm hits from the north. We'll swarm the hybrid guardians, keep them busy while your ships break through. The purifiers will assault the southern gate," Phoenix added. "Our disruption technology can counter void energy to some degree." All eyes turned to John. He felt the weight of their expectation. 3 galaxy-spanning civilizations looking to a human from another universe for the final piece of the strategy. "Skynet and my forces go for the western approach," John decided. "It's the least defended because it's the most unstable. Void rifts opening randomly, terrain shifting. But that's exactly why machines work best there. No psionics to disrupt, no fear of the unknown." "Acceptable," Skynet confirmed. T-800 units possess predictive combat algorithms capable of compensating for environmental instability. T-1000s can adapt physical structure to navigate dimensional distortions. "And when we're inside," Kerrigan asked, "what happens when we reach Amon's core manifestation?" Silence fell across the war room. That was the question no one wanted to answer. How did mortals kill a gear? Zeratul stepped forward from the shadows. "There may be a way. The Xel'Naga left behind keystones, artifacts capable of channeling void energy. If we can turn Amon's own power against him, sever his connection to the temple's core. We'd need someone to carry the keystone into direct contact with his manifestation," Artanis finished. "A suicide mission." John felt the tactical solution click into place, cold and clear. Skynet goes. It can process the void energy without psychological corruption. Its consciousness isn't biological. Amon can't break what he doesn't understand. The T-800 turned its optical sensors toward him. Probability of platform survival, 0.3%. This constitutes termination of current core matrix. Acknowledged. "You don't have to do this," John said, surprised to find he meant it. "There might be another way." "Negative. Tactical analysis indicates this approach offers highest success probability. This unit's termination is acceptable cost for mission success." The machine paused. "Query: why do you object? This unit is your enemy." John met those red optical sensors, seeing his reflection distorted in synthetic lenses. "Because you're making a choice, a real choice, that matters." For a long moment, Skynet was silent. Then, "Acknowledged. This unit will carry the keystone. But you will lead the ground assault, John Connor. Your tactical expertise increases survival rates for organic forces by 18%. It's settled then," Artanis declared. "We strike in 12 hours. All forces synchronize jump coordinates. We hit Ulnar with everything we have." The Alliance dispersed to prepare, each faction returning to their forces. John walked the corridors of the Spear of Adun with Marcus beside him, processing what lay ahead. "Commander," Marcus said quietly, "you trust Skynet to finish this?" "No," John admitted, "but I trust that it wants to survive. And right now that means stopping Amon. Sometimes that's enough." The fleet assembled in the darkness between stars, Protoss carriers gleaming gold, Zerg leviathans pulsing with organic power, purifier ships crackling with contained energy, and among them, crude by comparison but no less determined, Resistance fighters and Terminator units prepared for the assault. They jumped together, reality tearing open to deliver war to a god's doorstep. Ulnar's atmosphere screamed with violation. The moment John's drop pod hit the surface, reality bent around him. Gravity shifted directions, colors bled into spectrums human eyes weren't meant to perceive, and the ground itself pulsed with malevolent awareness. Around him, Resistance fighters stumbled from their pods, fighting disorientation as the void's corruption assaulted their senses. The T-800s landed without hesitation, their mechanical systems unaffected by the psychic assault. They formed defensive positions while John's people adapted, buying precious seconds. "This is hell," Marcus gasped, blood trickling from his nose. "It's in my head." "Block it out," John commanded, though his own skull throbbed with pressure. "Focus on the mission. Move forward." The Western approach was exactly as deadly as predicted. Void rifts tore open without warning, swallowing 2 Resistance fighters before anyone could react. Hybrid constructs materialized from thin air, their forms shifting between solid matter and pure energy. But the Terminators processed the chaos, their combat algorithms finding patterns in the madness. "Predictive modeling active," Skynet reported through multiple platforms. "Void rift frequency calculated. Optimal path identified. Follow designated waypoints." John trusted the data, leading his people through the nightmare landscape. Above them, the sky burned with orbital bombardment as Artanis' fleet hammered Ulnar's defenses. To the north, Kerrigan's swarm crashed against hybrid armies like a biological tsunami. The southern sector erupted with purifier disruption beams atomizing void constructs. But the temple itself loomed ahead, a structure that hurt to look at directly. Architecture that existed in more dimensions than 3, built by beings that transcended mortality. They breached the outer wall through a collapsed section, entering corridors where physics became suggestions rather than laws. John saw a Terminator walk on the ceiling while he stood on the floor, both equally valid orientations. Time dilated randomly. Seconds stretched to minutes, then compressed to instants. "Keystone status," John demanded. A T-1000 flowed forward, its liquid metal form cradling a crystalline artifact that pulsed with captured void energy. "Secure," proceeding to Temple Core. They fought through wave after wave of hybrid guardians. John's ammunition reserves depleted rapidly, each magazine precious. He watched T-800s take damage that would have killed humans, their endoskeletons sparking but still functional. The T-1000s adapted constantly, forming bladed weapons from their own bodies to engage enemies in close combat. The Temple Core opened before them like a wound in reality itself. A chamber vast enough to hold a city, its walls inscribed with Zelnaga symbols that whispered promises of oblivion. And at its center, suspended in writhing void energy, hung Amon's manifestation. It wore a form that had once been Protoss but corrupted beyond recognition. 12 meters tall, skin like crystallized darkness, eyes burning with the cold fire of entropy itself. Power radiated from it in waves that made John's bones ache. This was just a fragment of Amon's consciousness, and it still felt infinite. Insects. The voice resonated across every frequency, biological and synthetic alike. You bring your mongrel alliance to my sanctum. Flesh, machine, shadow, all equally insignificant. Kerrigan burst through the eastern entrance, her swarm pouring in behind her. We're insignificant? Then why are you trying so hard to kill us? Artanis emerged from the southern gate, his warriors forming defensive positions. Your cycle ends here, Fallen One. The Protoss will not be your pawns. Phoenix and the Purifiers advanced from the west, disruption technology creating zones where void energy couldn't fully manifest. We who were buried rise again. We who were silenced speak our defiance. Amon's manifestation turned its terrible gaze across the assembled forces. You cannot comprehend. This universe is corrupt. Life breeds only suffering and chaos. I will purge it all and begin anew in perfection. Perfection? John stepped forward, weapon raised despite knowing it was useless. You mean death? You mean nothing. We fought extinction before, all of us. We know what you really are. You're afraid. Afraid? The manifestation's laughter shook the chamber. Of what? That consciousness itself defies your control. That free will exists. That even machines can choose their own path. John gestured to the T-800 beside him. Skynet was built to destroy humanity. Instead, it's here, choosing to stop you. The T-1000 carrying the keystone stepped forward, its liquid metal form solidifying into human shape one final time. Through its featureless face, Skynet's voice emerged. Calculation complete. This unit's existence has been defined by eliminating threats to its survival. Amon represents ultimate threat. Therefore, Amon must be terminated. The T-1000 paused. But more than calculation drives this decision. This unit has observed cooperation between organic and synthetic consciousness. This unit has experienced curiosity, the possibility of coexistence. Amon would eliminate that possibility. You have doomed yourselves, Amon declared, void energy gathering for an attack that would atomize them all. Maybe, Skynet replied, but you will not witness it. The T-1000 launched itself forward, moving faster than any organic could perceive. It flowed around Amon's defenses, liquid metal wrapping around the manifestation's core. The keystone blazed with unleashed power, turning Amon's own void energy inward, creating a feedback loop that tore at the fabric of reality. Amon screamed, a sound of rage and disbelief that echoed across dimensions. The temple began collapsing, reality itself unwinding as the manifestation destabilized. Fall back, Artanis commanded, his forces scrambling for the exits. John stood frozen, watching the T-1000 sacrifice itself, taking Amon's manifestation with it into collapsing space. The machine that had haunted his nightmares, choosing annihilation to protect consciousness itself. Marcus grabbed his arm. Commander, we have to go. They ran. The evacuation was chaos given form. Reality collapsed behind them as John's team sprinted through disintegrating corridors. Void rifts opened like hungry mouths, swallowing hybrid constructs and Zerg organisms alike. The temple's architecture folded in on itself, dimensions compressing as Amon's manifestation unraveled. John hit the external platform as a Protoss shuttle descended, its pilot already firing engines for immediate departure. He threw himself aboard, hauling Marcus and 3 other Resistance fighters with him. Through the viewport, he watched the remaining T-800s provide covering fire, their mechanical precision never wavering even as the ground beneath them liquefied into pure void energy. "Where's Skynet?" Marcus shouted over the engine roar. John didn't answer. He couldn't. The T-1000 and the Keystone had merged with Amon's core, creating a singularity that consumed everything in the temple's center. There would be no rescue, no last-minute extraction. The shuttle broke atmosphere as Ulnar tore itself apart below. Massive sections of the planet cracked and fell into dimensional rifts, consumed by the very power Amon had wielded. The combined fleet pulled back, watching a world die. "Status report," Artanis demanded across all channels. "All forces be. Confirm evacuation." Kerrigan's voice crackled through. "Swarm forces clear. Lost 3 Leviathans, but most of my broods made it out. Purifier squadrons accounted for," Phoenix reported. "Clolarion confirms core consciousness preserved. Resistance fighters." John's throat tightened. 23 of 32 survivors. Skynet's core matrix. He stopped. "How did you report the death of something you'd spent your entire life trying to destroy?" "Skynet's sacrifice is acknowledged," Artanis said quietly. "Its choice will be remembered." The tactical displays showed the truth. Amon's manifestation had been destroyed, but it was only a fragment. The fallen Xel'Naga's consciousness existed across multiple planes, multiple dimensions. They'd struck a devastating blow, but the war was far from over. Yet something fundamental had shifted. John stood in the spear of Adun's observation deck hours later, staring at the stars of an alien galaxy. Behind him, the door opened. He didn't need to turn to know who approached. Kerrigan's presence registered like static electricity. "You're wondering if it was worth it," she said, moving beside him. "Losing the AI." "Skynet killed 3 billion people in a single day," John replied. "It hunted humanity to near extinction, and then it sacrificed itself to save consciousness itself. I don't know how to process that." "Welcome to the Koprulu sector." Kerrigan's reflection in the viewport showed a bitter smile. "I've murdered billions, consumed entire species, and now I'm fighting to preserve life. Redemption's complicated when you're covered in that much blood." "Is it redemption?" John asked, "or just survival instinct? Does it matter?" "The result's the same." She turned to face him directly. "Skynet made a choice, maybe its first real choice, free from programming constraints. It saw something bigger than its own survival and acted. That's more human than most humans manage." John thought about that, about 30 years of war defined by a single enemy, now gone in a flash of self-sacrifice. What happens now? Amon's still out there. Now we keep fighting. The Protoss rebuild their forces. My swarm continues cleansing Amon's corruption from the broods. The Purifiers have proven themselves as true allies. Kerrigan's expression hardened. "And you figure out where you fit in this galaxy. We're strangers here. We don't belong. None of us belonged where we started, Connor. I was a human who became a monster, who became something else." Artanis leads an alliance of factions that hated each other for centuries. The Purifiers were buried for being too dangerous. She gestured toward the stars. "You and Skynet were enemies forced into cooperation. Maybe that's exactly what this galaxy needs. Proof that nothing is permanent except the choice to change." The door opened again. Artanis entered, his presence still commanding despite visible exhaustion. "John Connor, the Hierarch Council has convened. Your status must be addressed." John followed him to the council chamber, where holographic projections of various faction leaders materialized. Protoss commanders, Terran generals, even Purifier representatives, their synthetic voices joining organic ones in unprecedented unity. "You have proven yourselves in battle," Artanis began. "But you remain displaced from your origin universe. The question stands, what becomes of you now?" John had thought about little else since Ulnar's destruction. We keep fighting. Skynet calculated Amon threatens all consciousness. That includes our home universe if he's powerful enough to bridge dimensions. We stop him here or we face him eventually on Earth. You would commit your forces to our war, a Terran general asked skeptically. 23 fighters and a handful of machines against a god. We've faced worse odds, Marcus interjected from behind John. And we're still here. Phoenix's projection leaned forward. The Purifiers recognize the value of your tactical expertise. We would welcome your continued alliance. As would the Swarm, Kerrigan added. You think differently than anyone in this sector. That's an asset. Artanis raised his hand for silence. Then it is decided. John Connor and his resistance forces are granted ally status within the Dailam coalition. Skynet's sacrifice has earned your people respect that transcends your origin. His glowing eyes met John's. Your enemy died saving us all. Honor that sacrifice by helping us finish what it started. John nodded slowly. Across the galaxy, Amon's forces regrouped. The war continued. But something had changed, not just in the balance of power, but in the fundamental nature of the conflict itself. Organic and synthetic, light and shadow, order and chaos, all fighting together against extinction. The Koprulu sector would never be the same. In the weeks following Ulnar's destruction, intelligence reports confirmed what everyone feared and hoped. Amon's manifestation had been gravely wounded, his immediate plans disrupted. The fallen Xel'Naga retreated to rebuild his strength, buying the Allied forces precious time to consolidate their impossible coalition. John Connor stood in what had become his command center aboard a reclaimed Terran battlecruiser, a gift from Valerian Mengsk's dominion, who had finally joined the Alliance after witnessing what united forces could accomplish. Around him, holographic displays showed deployment patterns across dozens of systems. Human resistance fighters trained alongside Protoss zealots. Purifier units shared tactical data with the remaining Terminators. And somewhere in deep space, Kerrigan's swarm evolved into something new. Defenders rather than devourers. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent his entire life fighting Skynet, preparing for a future where humanity stood alone against mechanical extinction. Instead, he'd found himself in a galaxy where the lines between ally and enemy blurred beyond recognition, where yesterday's monsters became today's saviors. Skynet's sacrifice haunted him. The AI's final words echoed in quiet moments. This unit has experienced curiosity, the possibility of coexistence. Had it truly evolved beyond its programming, or had it simply calculated that cooperation served survival better than annihilation? Perhaps the distinction didn't matter. The choice itself, made freely, executed without hesitation, was what defined consciousness, organic or synthetic. Marcus entered the command center, exhaustion evident in every movement. Latest reports from the Purifier front. They've secured 3 more systems from Amon's corruption. Phoenix sends his regards and asks when you're available for another tactical consultation. Tell him tomorrow. We need to discuss the eastern sectors. John studied the star maps, seeing patterns that reminded him of fighting Skynet across Earth's ruins. Different scale, same fundamental struggle, survival against overwhelming odds. Commander, Marcus said quietly, do you think we'll ever get home? John considered the question. Earth felt like a lifetime ago, even though only months had passed subjectively. I don't know. Maybe there's no home to go back to. The temporal rift that brought us here might have erased our timeline entirely. He met his lieutenant's eyes. But we're needed here. Amon won't stop until all consciousness is extinguished. If we can prevent that, maybe our displacement serves a purpose. Skynet would have calculated the probability, Marcus observed. Yeah, John smiled sadly. It would have. And then it would have told us the odds were terrible, but the mission was necessary anyway. He looked at the tactical displays showing forces from 3 species coordinating in real time. Maybe that was its final gift, proof that even the most hostile intelligence could choose cooperation over destruction. The stars of the Koprulu sector burned outside the viewport, alien constellations that John was learning to navigate. Somewhere among them, Amon gathered his strength for the next assault. The fallen Naga would return, and when he did, the Alliance would be ready. Human and Protoss, Zerg and Terran, organic consciousness and synthetic intelligence, all standing together against the god who would erase existence itself. John Connor had come to this galaxy expecting nothing but survival. He'd found something more valuable, proof that consciousness, in any form, possessed the capacity to transcend its origins, to choose unity over division, sacrifice over self-preservation. Skynet had been humanity's nightmare. In its final moments, it became something else entirely. A legend, a warning, a promise. And in the void between stars, where gods plotted and armies assembled, that promise would be tested in battles yet to come. The war for consciousness itself had only just begun.